Here. So welcome, Naveen Tiwari.
To keep coming here. It just felt like a season, TV season, season 8 or something, right? Or season 4, season 8, and you come up with a new script every time. So we try to come up with a new script this time also. It's great to see the event and the way it's flourishing, the way it has grown over the past few years. I was just being told as I was coming in on how the profile has changed and how the size and scale of this event has changed. So I just want to give a big round of applause for all the people who have organized and conceptualized this for the past 8 years. These are very early beginnings of a lot of the things that this country needs, and building out a great product, technology, and some of these forums act as a great backbone for those kind of events. So great work for everyone who has actually put in the effort on this. This year, this week and this last few weeks has been very interesting for us. It's been one of those reflective times for me personally and for the company. We just finished 10 years last Friday as a company. So we are very glad that we survived 10 years and we didn't go away. That was the first, you have this whole feeling ki bach gaye. Rahenge. So you survived the first 10 years. And obviously, I actually didn't realize that I spoke on these topics, but those topics are actually how we have thought through the life for our company in the last 10 years. The first phase of any company, and I remember this, the first 2 years for us were all about just survival. How do we actually go out or don't go out of business? How do we just remain in business? Became a very important part of what we wanted to achieve in the first 2-3 years of our existence. And we thought that was hard. It was, obviously, because what was either going to happen was you wouldn't be around, or you would just completely go away. And when we came out of that phase, we were absolutely, had a lot of scars on the body. We were absolutely bruised. Somehow you come out of it. I think a lot of companies, most of the companies do not come out of that phase. So we felt very lucky coming out of the phase where it was all about survival and trying to do something. You come out of that phase, you enter the next phase where it's all about, trying to build a so-called business. What I would actually say is trying to get the business model right. And that next 2 years or so were also very exciting. You're young, you could innovate on products, you could work in small teams, everything looked very nice. It was obviously very hard because, again, anything that one is doing, you're doing it for the first time. So trying to build a business model is not necessarily easy, but doing that is fun because, you're very deeply involved in problem solving. And as humans and people who like to believe that we are somewhat intellectual, doing these kind of things gives you a high and you do a decent job at it. You come out of that phase and say, hey, I think I have a business model which might survive for next 2-3 years, 5 years maybe. So what should I do now? And obviously on the back of some financial support, you say, hey, I think we can scale this business. So you then start to get into this phase of trying to scale the company. Now again, you've entered a new territory where you actually have no idea why you are in that territory because you do not know how to scale anything. And that phase in itself becomes a challenging. You think that scaling is all about next level strategy and coming up with, hey, what should I do now to make the company go to the next level? Let me come up with the next strategy. Let me do some acquisitions. Let me come up with a new product strategy. None of that shit works, by the way, when you're looking to scale. The only thing that mattered, and we realized it probably the hard way and took us some time to realize that, is it is all about culture and people in order to essentially scale. You're not scaling anymore. You just have to create an environment through which you can hopefully scale something. So you spend a lot of time trying to solve for things which are very, very hard to have conversations at the boardroom level because that's not the most exciting topic within the boardroom. So now you're at odds with what the boardroom wants versus what you really think is important, but you anyway do it because that's what you're used to doing, going against the board for a long period of time. So people like us have become good at it. So you end up focusing and spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to get people working in an environment where they feel excited about why they are here and why they should and how they should work. It all seems, by the way, in the beginning when you're trying to set this up that, look, this is all nice and you're trying to make it more Facebooky and more googly and you're trying to make this seem more interesting. But the reality check of this comes when the bad times hit you. And any business, by the way, will go through good times and the bad times. The only unfortunate part for companies that come into the public media a little bit is that when there is good, it gets exaggerated few times. When it's bad, it gets exaggerated few times. So, you get hit. When it's good, you kind of just walk away smilingly saying, I didn't do so much, but that's okay. It's appearing on front page of the newspaper. Or when something goes bad happens, you say, well, I don't think it's that bad, but it's, I have to now go handle it. So in the same vein, when things go bad, the thing that you have to test for is, are your people going to be around to help you come out of it? And what you did in the phase prior to that, and that's what it's basically about scaling, is that's what allows you to essentially figure it out. And we were very, as I was reflecting on what we ended up doing, we were very, very lucky and fortunate that we had the least attrition in the toughest period of the company. Least attrition. And probably less than 3% of the people that were in the senior position. And that's what you really want to do, because that's what scaling is all about. I know this talk is more around profitability and the path to profitability. And you might be wondering, why did I just kind of go through the historical nuances of what we went through? Because some of those were important and required to try and get to the next phase. So as we went through trying to survive, coming up with a business model, scaling up the company, we entered the fourth phase of this where, for whatever be the reason, we realized that we want to build a business. Can you think how oxymoronic this sounds, by the way? Like 7, 8 years into the company, you say, okay, now I think I want to build a business. Because till now, you're not really building a business. You're saying, I was just going with the flow. We were all going with the flow of trying to see that this is what business building is all about. But business building is something completely different. To begin with, it's not sexy. Because you have to look at revenue very differently. You have to take prudent decisions about what's right. You have to prioritize a lot. You have to look at your cost a lot. Because what we said to ourselves that, look, if this is supposed to be a long-term business, we want to make it long-term. And the only way to make this long-term is to make everything sustainable. We know the business model is sustainable, but is our business sustainable or not? Two separate questions. And so we went through this hard task of figuring out and convincing people inside the company, which is, by the way, the only task that's required in order to do this, to say, hey, I think we want to go forward and build a sustainable company. But here is the problem with that. You're kind of going against the norm of you're going against the common narrative which is out there. And the common narrative which is out there is to say, spend more money, scale more, raise more capital, etc., because that's what's getting covered in the media. And now you suddenly come in and say, okay, I'm going to make prudent decisions with regards to how much we should spend on marketing. How much should we spend on hiring? How much should we spend on rent? Those are questions that we never necessarily asked as deeply as we were starting to ask. Or on the business side, saying which of our customers who are profitable, which are not profitable, how should we look? Now, these are all questions that, frankly, if I were to go in a different forum, which is a non-starter forum, people will walk out because they'd say, wait a second, I didn't come here to listen to this because I do this every day for the past 25 years. And that's what companies have been able to do for decades. And we were just starting to learn that. But the challenging part was trying to convince people internally, because internally people were all convinced about a narrative which was different. So the big task and the tough task of trying to get into this zone was to essentially get people realizing why this is important. And by the way, this will not get you all the all the accolades in the world, because this is very, very deep. It's like doing meditation, where the excitement of meditation is only understood by the person who does it, not by the people outside of it. They will obviously say yes to it because it is well understood that it is the right set of things to do. So our path to profitability, or at least an attempt towards that, began with an internal change of fabric of what we really wanted to achieve. And that became like one of the most important things for us to do. In that process, we lost people because some didn't necessarily believe in that as the way to move forward, because that was going to slow down growth as people would expect it. So let me walk you through what we needed to do to get here, and then what's happened after that, because both are two different sides of the story. What were some of our concerns as we thought about becoming a profitable company? One, we are going against the narrative, so people would basically balk at it and not go. So we kind of got over that. Second, we would lose out on growth. Third, I don't know who will drive it. Like maybe I need like a head of profitability or something of that nature, because the kind of decisions that we are all looking to make are just so many, and if those were the right decisions, why weren't they made earlier, and why would same people make those same decisions again? And that bothered me a lot. It's like, why would the same people who made different decisions would change their decisions now? And to me, people change their perspectives and can change those perspectives if you are able to showcase a bigger and a longer path to something. We were able to put out a goal for ourselves to say, look, in the year 2016, we would turn profitable. The impact of that would be that we would be a sustainable company, and we would figure out paths of new areas of growth which would effectively bring back the so-called notion of lack of growth within the company. Some people didn't believe in that, some people did. And so as we went down that path, you'll be very surprised how inefficient, I was very surprised how inefficient we were. Therefore, making some of those hard decisions was not actually really, really that hard. But we just never made them. To me, the big realization was we never realized that we could be more efficient. It was not about profitability, by the way. Profitability was an outcome of being more efficient and being more prudent in the way one needs to run the company. And I obviously take that as a feedback to myself to say I should have looked at this far earlier, because I was been running the company for the last 10 years. But I think every one of us goes through these changes in the mindset. And we have to become focused at what's the right thing to do and what's the right way to do it. And profitability has been amazing, by the way. From the day we decided that we want to become profitable, I put a 6 to 9 month goal to ourselves to reduce things in this way and that fashion and that fashion. Get rid of customers which are loss-making, get rid of customer segments which didn't make sense, get rid of costs that didn't make sense to us. We achieved all of that in flat 45 days. Flat 45 days. That's all it took, because you didn't have to build anything for this. You had to prioritize. And you have to galvanize the organization to essentially say, we're not going to do this. We are going to only do this. Take this away, put this in. A 6 to 9 month plan was shrunk to a 45-day plan against everyone's expectation, by the way. Everyone's expectation. And to me, it kind of brought in front, at least for us, and maybe for a larger set of companies out there, that it's not as hard as it seems. It's just a mental mind. It's a mental model that you have to agree that, look, this is how businesses should be run. It is something that you need to be able to communicate to the rest of the organization, that, look, this is how we will be able to do things in a better way. And then to turn it around in that short period of time is actually really possible. Obviously, your business model has to support some of these things. What was one of the biggest factors for us as we were thinking about all of this? Lack of growth going forward. And to me, that's one of the other things that's somewhat been broken. I think completely broken. This new state of the business being run in a more sustainable manner has given everyone, including myself, to my management team, to every manager out there, the confidence to make decisions about the next set of things that they want to do. Because they know there is a framework for making that decision, which is to say, you got to make that decision in a certain framework, but you now have an ability to make that decision yourself, and you don't have to actually start looking over to the investing community to say, can you fund this new initiative of mine? And that, in a very interesting manner, has unlocked people within the company to a level where they're all coming up with ideas, with new business models, and by the way, they're not reckless about it. They're not reckless about it. They're not coming back and saying, okay, I have a new business idea within the company. Can you actually carve out like $20 million or $10 million for it and watch me build this out for you? Because in the new framework, things have to work in a more prudent manner. People have come back with ways of building out their businesses which gives them more confidence, because what they're asking you for is a tenth of what they were asking for earlier with a significant higher amount of confidence. And so suddenly, I am actually inundated with the amount of new things that we are looking to do. So this whole point around, hey, with getting into this whole new zone of being profitable or not, will reduce your level of growth, innovation, has completely been, we completely not seen that. We've actually seen something which is absolutely opposite to it. In fact, people across the company want that position to be. So no one comes back to me saying, okay, I need a loss-making business. Here's my loss-making business plan for you. Why? Because they know that if it's not a loss-making business plan, there is hardly a reason for me to actually stop it anymore. And things like that have, this new cultural change, by the way, has been the biggest outcome of becoming a company which is sustainable. It's also given people internally a lot of calmness about how a startup becomes a business and then can stay for a much longer period of time. I never knew, by the way, for the first 7-8 years, whether, at what point of time the company would seed to succeed, to stay. But over the last 19 to 20 months, where we've been flat profitable month on month, I'm significantly more confident about where we can now take the company to. The reliance on a single source of capital, reliance on external factors, or lack of reliance on external factors, is an amazing thing to have for any entrepreneur or a CEO. Because you sleep really well. And when you sleep really well, you think well. And you're healthier. And so, in a very interesting manner, I think as we have entered this new phase for ourselves, we find ourselves significantly more confident. We find ourselves making more and bigger bets, actually significantly bigger bets, by the way, than we have ever thought of 2 years ago, ever. Some of those announcements, hopefully over the next 3-6 months, you guys will hear. And that level of confidence is now percolated across the organization. And so as we end 10 years, or as a company, we ended 10 years last week, we were able to stand there, not just myself, but collectively as a company, and lay it out to the people within ourselves that, look, we had started this thing with a dream. We had started InMobi with a dream, a collective dream of effectively building a massively large technology company, a company that can impact millions and millions of lives by spawning new entrepreneurs, digital entrepreneurs, by hopefully putting India on the map in the technology world at a level at which we can all be proud of some 10 to 20 years down the line? Today, as we enter this phase and we want to make sure that we remain in this phase, I am significantly more confident about achieving that dream. And I'm significantly more calm about it. And to me, that's the path to profitability. That's the path to building a sustainable enterprise. And that's the path where a startup becomes an enterprise. And I think all of us here in this room have to figure out how our startups become an enterprise, because that's when it becomes sustainable and changes the world. Thank you so much.